Hello and welcome along to another episode of Aviation Analysis, the channel that brings you the most bizarre and interesting stories from the skies. On January the 30th, 1948, a British South American Airways passenger plane called the Star Tiger was en route from the island of Santa Maria in the Azores, heading towards Bermuda. Unfortunately, a storm would cause all sorts of confusion, resulting in the flight and all 31 people vanishing without a trace. 1 year later, on January the 17th, 1949, another BSSA passenger plane called the Star Ariel would take to the sky from Bermuda on its way towards Kingston, Jamaica. They would never make it either. What exactly happened to these flights, and what did they have in common? Could it be that the stories concerning the Bermuda Triangle were true? What was the aftermath of such tragic and mysterious circumstances? Join us on this 2-for-1 episode as we attempt to solve the puzzle here on Aviation Analysis. To begin, as always, we must understand the general specifications of the cases in question before going any further. Both planes were Avro Tudor Forts, a post-war design based on a World War II bomber, which were pressurized but not considered appropriate or pleasant for long-haul flights. Both models had conducted numerous transatlantic flights with more than 800 hours flying time between them since their initial test flights during World War II. Star Tiger was flown by experienced pilot Captain Brian W. McMillan, alongside second pilot David Colby, DFC, another highly experienced pilot and ex-RAF Pathfinder 4 squadron leader. This was followed by Captain John Clutha McPhee, formerly of the Royal New Zealand Air Force, in the Star Ariel. The disappearances became synonymous with the conspiracy theory surrounding the Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle. The region is a loosely defined triangle between Bermuda, Puerto Rico, and the southern tip of Florida. Let us now look at the first mystery of the Star Tiger, which took to the sky on January the 29th, 1948 from Santa Maria, an island within the eastern group of the Azores archipelago and the southernmost island in the Azores. Earlier, on January 28th, the flight had returned from its initial departing airport in Lisbon after Captain Brian W. McMillan notified the mechanical team that the port inner engine required attention. It then made its way towards the Portuguese island, where it had a longer than planned layover due to bad weather. The aircraft contained 31 occupants in total. 16 were British, 2 were Mexican, 2 were Czech, 1 was Swiss, and 4 were stateless. Of the passengers, 7 were bound for Bermuda, 12 were bound for Kingston, Jamaica, and 6 were bound for Havana, Cuba. After finally setting off at 15:34 on the 29th of January towards Bermuda, weather conditions were reported as being relatively normal, despite strong winds keeping the plane at a maximum altitude of 2,000 feet. Not long after the Star Tiger was in the air, it encountered unexpected heavy rain and increasingly strong wind speeds. Captain McMillan had been in radio contact with another pilot, Frank Griffin, who was flying his own Avro Lancastrian and had set off 1 hour previously. The men had agreed to keep in touch, with Griffin providing his fellow pilot with weather updates along their similar flight path. The planes would keep a safe but close distance between them for the first 200 miles. By 1:26 on the 30th of January, the Star Tiger was approximately 150 miles behind the Lancastrian. The winds were proving to be a challenge for both pilots, with Griffin stabilizing their position and flight path using celestial navigation. It was during this time that they realized that the winds had pushed them off track by 60 miles earlier in their journey. McMillan noted that the flight had surpassed its point of no alternative when an aircraft is no longer capable of returning to the airfield from which it took off due to fuel considerations, and had to dismiss plans to divert to Newfoundland. Around 2 o'clock on the morning of the 30th, the flight navigator, Cyril Ellison, rectified the plane's position and provided McMillan with a new course. However, the captain was confident that he would reach their destination with at least an hour's worth of fuel to spare. An hour after the discussions between both men, Captain Griffin from the Lancastrian updated his estimated time of arrival from 3:56 to 5 o'clock, and radioed into the Star Tiger to continue their correspondence via voice telephony alongside Bermuda's air traffic control. A few minutes later, at 3:04, radio officer Robert Tuck from the Star Tiger requested a radio bearing from Bermuda. Unfortunately, they could not decipher the information due to a loss of signal. He would reattempt contact 11 minutes later and was able to liaise with the radio operator in Bermuda to obtain a bearing of 72 degrees, accurate within 2 degrees. The message was well received by Tuck at 3:17. However, no one would hear from the crew of Star Tiger ever again. With weather conditions worsening by the minute and communication lost, the staff in Bermuda tried on several occasions to get in touch with the now doomed aircraft. At 3:50, they thought it had gone over to direct radio contact with Bermuda Approach Control. Once confirmed that no contact was made to them either, they began to fear the worst. However, they kept trying until 4:40 before declaring a state of emergency. Interestingly, Captain Griffin from the Lancastrian would later state that there was no signs of concern or distress by any of the crew members aboard the Star Tiger. Their messages were clear and professional and did not indicate a sense of confusion, panic or urgency. Later that day, Press Dispatch reported the plane's loss at 440 miles northeast of Bermuda, and so the search was on to find the missing aircraft. Members of the US Air Force who were located at the nearest airfields were immediately deployed to assemble a rescue mission consisting of 6 militarized aircraft taking to the skies and surveying the region for a total of 882 hours. Those based on land were also dispatched to investigate the local surface areas for clues and/or evidence. All attempts at rescue or locating the missing plane were in vain, as they came up short each and every time. The only potential sighting was reported on the 1st of February 1948 by a B-17 search plane. The pilot stated that several boxes and oil drums were spotted approximately 325 miles northwest of Bermuda. However, it is not clear if these belonged to the Star Tiger or not. What was clear was that the plane and all its passengers and crew were now declared as missing without a trace. After learning of the Tiger's disappearance, BSAA's remaining aviatures were grounded by Britain's Minister of Civil Aviation and only allowed to carry cargo in the weeks that followed. The flight plans would also change, diverting via Newfoundland. Managing directors of Avro, Sir Roy Dobson and Don Bennett, publicly denied any technical issues with the plane, suggesting sabotage was to blame, so a judicial investigation was launched into the cause. Both directors believed that a well-known aviation assailant had been spotted near the Star Tiger model shortly before it took off. The investigative techniques employed seemed to infuriate Bennett so badly that his public outrage at the scheduled hearing resulted in BSAA firing him from his position. Lord Macmillan was appointed to head the investigation and was supported by a professor of aviation from the University of London and the chief pilot of British European Airways. The inquiry was assessed by Professor Arnold Hall of the Royal Aircraft Establishment, RAE. The research was conducted at Church House, Westminster, and began on the 12th of April 1948 for 11 days. On the 21st of August, the conclusive report was presented to Lord Pakenham, Minister of Civil Aviation. It stated that all crew members aboard the Star Tiger had an abundance of experience and technical ability throughout their careers, their only criticism being a want of care and attention to detail with regards to the flight plan. The inquiry concluded, in the complete absence of any reliable evidence as to either the nature or the cause of the accident of Star Tiger, the court has not been able to do more than suggest possibilities, none of which reaches the level even of probability. What happened in this case will never be known, and the fate of Star Tiger must remain an unsolved mystery. With the mystery surrounding the disappearance of the Star Tiger still very much in the news and hanging over the aviation community, it wouldn't be long before the second incident would occur, the vanishing of Star Ariel. Almost a year to the day, January 17, 1949, the Star Ariel would take off at 0841 with 7 crew and 13 passengers on board, all of which were doomed to suffer a similar fate of those from the previous year. Before she took to the sky, early weather reports confirmed that conditions were clear and ideal to the journey towards the Caribbean island nation of Jamaica. Captain McPhee decided to take the plane to a higher altitude based on the elements and would radio into Kingston Control Base 1 hour into the flight path. Transcripts reveal the brief message from the captain. I departed from Kindley Airfield at 8:41 am hours, my ETA at Kingston 2:10 pm hours. I'm flying in good visibility at 18,000 feet. I flew over 150 miles south of Kindley Field at 9:32 hours. My ETA at 30 degrees north is 9:37 hours. Will you accept control? At 09:42, he radioed in again. I was over 30 degrees north at 9:37. I'm changing frequency to Mike Radio X-ray. And just like that, it was over. No more messages were received from Star Ariel. The plane had disappeared without a single trace. Those on the ground at Kingston would register the flight as being overdue, and so a search team was dispatched in the hope that history was not going to repeat itself. Another Tudor 4 GAHNJ Star Panther would lead the way in the search for the missing aircraft. The Panther set off at 15:25 to fly out to Star Ariel's route towards Bermuda, whilst another rescue plane took off from Bermuda and flew for more than 500 miles hoping to find them. Meanwhile, a US Navy task force was mobilized and led by the USS Missouri battleship. The vessel was accompanied by aircraft carriers USS Kearsarge and USS Leyte. Each had a multitude of smaller ships scouring the area as well. The search would continue into the 19th of January and had amassed a search area of 55,000 square miles southwest of Bermuda. Despite the best efforts and personal ambitions of US Air Force Major Keith Clow to find the plane, the search was eventually called off on the 23rd of January. No signs of debris, oil slicks or wreckage were found, and never have been since. An investigation was launched by the Chief Inspector of Accidents on the 18th of January. Due to the short distance and lack of communication between those on the ground and Captain McPhee, all possibilities were explored. Bad weather was immediately ruled out as weather reports did not log any issues whatsoever. It was reported that there was interference in communication, from static interruptions to complete loss of any transmissions to and from various flights across the region, including the Star Ariel. The communication issues were not resolved until 1307. This may have had a part to play in the connection to the plane and could have been the difference between life and death. No one will ever know if an emergency broadcast was made by the captain during the interruptions. A representative from the British South American Airways stated, "It would appear that the aircraft should have made firm contact with Mike Radio X-ray before requesting permission from Bermuda to change frequency. This was obviously not done, as Mike Radio X-ray never worked GAGRE on this frequency at all. In addition, I am convinced that the GAGRE did not ever transmit on this frequency of 6523 kilocycles per second, even if Bermuda did give authority to change frequency, which they could quite readily have done." Finally, on the 21st of December 1949, the report of the inquiry was issued by the Chief Inspector of Accidents, Air Commodore Vernon Brown, CB, OBE, MA, and FRAES. He declared that, through lack of evidence due to no wreckage having been found, the cause of the accident is unknown. As mentioned earlier in the episode, the terrifying events led to the Tudor 4 aircrafts being amended to transport freight. This continued for a while before Don Bennett requested that 2 versions of the model be restored for passenger use. One of these, GAKBY Stargirl, crashed near Cardiff in March 1950, where 8 people died, considered to be the worst aviation accident in British history at the time. A subsequent investigation concluded that the reason for the crash was down to wrongful loading of cargo. There is the obvious suggestion that paranormal forces were at play too. Depending on where one draws their triangulated diagram, the curious case of the Bermuda Triangle has haunted the region for a long time and is a possible reason for the plane's disappearances. The Bermuda Triangle is considered to be a section of the North Atlantic Ocean off North America where more than 50 ships and 20 aeroplanes, including the Star models, are known to have mysteriously disappeared. The area is generally accepted to be triangular in shape, measuring from the Atlantic coast of Florida to Bermuda to the islands known as the Greater Antilles. Reports of unexpected supernatural type occurrences have been documented since the mid-1800s, ranging from abandoned ships to distress signals that could not explain what was happening at the time. Could it be something unworldly that made the planes disappear? Or did they vanish into a portal of some kind? Stranger things have happened. A more recent theory came in 2009, where poor designing of the Tudor 4B's cabin heater was blamed for the disaster, according to Don McIntosh and Captain Peter Dufy, former BSSA pilots. The cabin heater, located underneath the floor of the cockpit, was also placed close to hydraulic pipes. Due to this design, hydraulic vapor may have leaked into the heater, resulting in an explosion of sorts. This theory was examined and supported by an air accident investigator called Eric Newton. He states that, if the heater had caught fire down below the floorboards, then it could have developed to a catastrophic state before the crew knew anything about it. There was no automatic fire extinguisher to put it out like there is nowadays. There was no alarm where the heater was stored, so no one would know possibly until it was too late. What do you think? And so we come to the end of this special edition of Aviation Analysis. We hope you enjoyed it. Regardless on one's views on the supernatural and whether or not a paranormal entity of Gateway was behind the vanishing of Star Tiger and Star Ariel, the fact remains that both flights, and more importantly, those who were on board, are still missing to this very day. No explanation has been fully reached, and there are more questions than answers. Let us hope, for the sake of the families, that we learn the truth one day. Until then, stay safe out there, folks, and we will catch you next time.